Rutgers football receives big news on Tuesday, long-awaited news that I did not expect them to ever get, and that is that the NCAA has ruled wide receiver transfer Naseim Brantley is eligible for the 2024 season, which is a big boon for the wide receiver group for Rutgers football heading into next fall, where the offense needs to continue to get better. And this is a big addition for Greg Schiano, Kirk Shiraka, the quarterback room for sure, with Gavin Wimsett and Ethan Kalikmanis. Whoever is under center has an established, experienced receiver, granted, at the FCS level, but Brantley will bring, I think, a lot to the wide receiver group. He's a big body guy. I think, in terms of, I think he'd be a big third down receiver. And to pair him now with Demir Miller, who led the FCS last year at Monmouth with catches and receiving yards, was it 1,200 something yards, 1,293 receiving yards, 117 yards per game. In terms of reception, he had 90 catches, 10 touchdowns. He had a big year for sure, and big expectations coming to Rutgers. I think the fact that you now pair Brantley with him, they arguably could be the 1 and 2 receivers, but I think together it almost takes a little bit of pressure off because they're both veteran guys in terms of college football. Again, they're making the leap to FBS. They're making the leap to Big Ten. I've talked about how, there's no sure thing there, right? I want to temper expectations in the sense of the wide receiver room got better today. I wouldn't say they're in a position of strength, meaning that they're in like a top 5 receiving group today on paper in the Big Ten, but they're certainly better. And I think compared to the way the wide receiver group looks this year versus last year, there's reasons to be very optimistic. You have Christian Dremel, your leading receiver back, obviously slot receiver. He led Rutgers last season with 36 receptions, also 468 receiving yards, 13 yards a catch, three touchdowns. He was very reliable, very consistent. Not the type of thing where, and the guy's a warrior, and he, won most improved spring player last year. This is no discredit to him, but when he's your leading receiver, you know that you need to improve your group as a whole. And if he is your number 3 receiver in 2024, then your receiving group is a lot better. And he would be a great number 3 receiver to have in the slot. Now you have Miller and Brantley in those 1 and 2 roles, I think, probably. The fact that Brantley stuck it out, the fact that the program stuck it out, there's nothing's come out yet. And again, this is pretty soon after the news. But he played 5 seasons. That's why I wasn't optimistic. And he played at least 5 games in 5 seasons. I think probably they made some argument where he got hurt in the 5th game of one of his seasons. And it was early on in the freshman or sophomore year. And maybe that was what they were waiting on and thinking was a no-brainer. And that's what it was. I don't know, the details, but credit to Rutgers for believing in the case that Brantley had. Credit to Brantley for sticking with Rutgers, and credit to everyone for just working. And, it doesn't really make sense why they waited a whole season to rule him eligible, but he is, and that's huge. And now you go into, 2024, it's late January. You're in, off-season workouts, weight room, you have spring practice. Spring game was announced for April 27th. So, spring practice will start sometime in early to mid-March. And that's huge. Now you go into it and you're full bore with him. And, listen, they lost Joquay Jackson. They lost Isaiah Washington. Those were their number 2, number 3 receivers last year. They combined, they each had about 20, Jackson had 22 catches, which was 3rd, 361 receiving yards, which is 2nd. He averaged the most yards per catch, 16.4. But we know he was battling injuries. He didn't play, as much as we had hoped, and didn't make as much of an impact as we had hoped. Still solid, but, not devastating in terms of, him leaving. Just from a production standpoint, wish him the best. And then Isaiah Washington, who was a program guy, I thought he had a pretty solid last season, 25 catches, 321 yards, touchdown, 12.8 yards catch. That's who you're losing. Plus, Johnny Langan had 14 catches last year. So you're losing a little over 40% of your production in terms of receptions last year. But you're at it. You have Dremel back. You have Ian Strong back. Strong was fourth with 230 yards, 16 catches, 2 touchdowns. He was second with 14.4 yards receiving. He showed a lot of promise. He showed a lot of youth and inexperience, but he really has the potential to be an impact player for this program moving forward. I've always wondered if maybe they convert him to tight end, but he's a big guy. He is certainly can evolve into a dangerous weapon. So, to have Dremel and Strong back, now you're adding Miller, Brantley, and let's not forget Chris Long, who was out most of the year. I mean, that's like adding a transfer also. And he's shown flashes at times. He had a catch in 11 of 12 games the year before, and he got hurt early on last year. But I had high hopes for him going into the year. Shiano said before the season, if he could just stay healthy, he's an all Big Ten type receiver. Injuries obviously have taken a toll on him, but if he can come back healthy, have a full spring, we're not even really like counting on him. But if he could be a factor in any way, that gives you a really solid 5 rotation. And then we're not even talking about all the young guys. Strong is young too. I don't want to admit that, but Fama Toure, Jesse O'Fury, Dylan Braithwaite, they all played a little bit last season. They all had a catch or two. They're all dynamic guys. There's some speed there. There's size there. Those are 3 guys that could develop in the offseason that they really could get something out of. And then you have Devon Fuse as well, who didn't, and he can move around positions, but he's a super athletic kid. And then you have the 3 freshmen coming in, including KJ Duff, 6'6", huge recruit for this program, 4-star. What's going to happen to him? Is he going to play? He could play a big role early on too. And then you have Benjamin Black, the speedster for North Carolina, and then Isaiah Crumpler, the legacy in terms of NFL, great family pipeline. He's 6 foot. He might take a little bit longer to develop, but I really like those 3 freshmen coming in the receiver group. There's a lot of youth. There's a lot of talent. As a whole, yes. They don't have Dremel proved he's a legit Big Ten receiver. Everyone, Ian Strong proved that he could be an impact receiver in the Big Ten, but has to be more consistent, of course. And then you have, I guess question marks in the sense of Big Ten doing it at that level, right? But Demir Miller really has a strong pedigree, leading the FCS. It's going to be a jump for him, but certainly high expectations for him. Brantley now getting back in the mix. His age, his maturity, his size, I think, he's going to give them a dynamic that they didn't currently have. Maybe they were going to dip into the transfer portal pool if they didn't get him back. Now they know that's kind of check off the list. I don't think they need to go portaling for a receiver anymore. And it's, listen, this is where their staff makes some money, right? They are a development program. Shiano said that time and time again. And you have one of the very best at Dave Brock and the wide receivers assistant coach, who's got, he's got a fun group to work with here. We'll see what happens with the passing game. Calais Manis, from Minnesota is there. His brother came over as a receiver as well. Doesn't have a ton of experience, but I think that, Wimsit, if he can make the step, whichever quarterback ultimately starts, we know Rutgers wants to make a step or two forward in the pass game. And they have a very interesting group now to do it. And I can't understate the importance of Brantley with Miller, but also Chris Long. Let's not forget about him in terms of his recovery. If he can get back, what he'll mean to them, then with Dremel and Strong, and then all these youngsters that were exciting, and have a lot of speed and playmaking ability that they're going to be raw. But this also takes pressure off of them, by adding Brantley. Listen, they could still find opportunity, but you're not relying on them as much. And that is huge for a program like Rutgers to have some veterans now more in the mix at the front of your rotation. That is a step. The roster depth and talent is not where they want it to be, but it's getting there. And this is a clear sign that it's getting better. So really big news for Rutgers to add Naseim Brantley into the mix for the 24 season. Again, credit to everyone involved and the fact that, he's patient and stuck it out. And he's obviously going to be motivated to have a great last hurrah. And, this passing game obviously has to evolve for Rutgers. You have Kyle Monungai, the rock back, behind line of scrimmage at running back. And but how they utilize the pass game, I still think they need a tight end in the portal, but you have some really intriguing pieces in the wide receiver group, guys that have different skill sets, different speed and size, and can be used in different ways. So it's going to be a fun spring to track this group, and certainly good news for this program. As they look to take that next step, this is a position group that clearly has not taken, on paper, with their roster in terms of their depth and their talent, they're not taking a step back. They can take a step forward, maybe two. We'll see. But certainly exciting news with the wide receivers for Rutgers football. And we'll have plenty more as we go on with the spring practice and my episodes with David Anderson. We'll have another one coming up soon, and keeping abreast of all off-season developments with Rutgers football here at the Scarlet Faithful podcast. Aaron Brightman, thank you for listening and watching once again.